hängt med och liksom sett till att det var illa att tälla lite. Det var lite sen som började med lastning, visste inte vad gränsnivå. Jag får inte fast dåliga system när det inte fanns.
Hi, my name is Veaceslav Chicu and I will talk about Jasper reports, Jasper soft product line. I will explain what analytics are, what are reporting, and we'll make some demos of our open source projects. Theodor Danciu started Jasper reports library in 2001. He needed to show data of his application and generate some reports in PDF and Excel format. Because Java was at the beginning, he didn't find any library to do that, so he started his own library. He made it open source and published it on SourceForge. And this library became popular. It's still popular today, and we have a lot of old and new users every day that successfully run reports. In 2003, I had the same problem as Theodor. I have worked on an application, and I needed to generate reports in Excel and PDF from our database. And we start looking for a library to do that. And after 2 days, we stopped on Jasper Reports library. We chose the Jasper Reports library because it was very simple to use, simple to embed in our application. We used WebSphere web server at the time and the Swing application, and it fits both environments. And the last reason is author was actually from the same city, and in case of problem we can find him and ask questions. And it was exactly like this actually. We start working with this library, and in the first date we submitted a couple of bugs and started asking questions. And in a week we meet the author, drink a beer, and since then we are collaborating with Theodor, and now I'm working in the same organization, and I'm also a Jasper Reports committer. So Jasper Reports library is a static reporting tool. This means you just get your data, and from this data, using a template, you'll generate a PDF file or Excel file. But users want more. Users want more interactivity. They don't want, like 10 years ago, only static reports. They want to click on something and see some changes. So if we talk about these changes, we talk about HTML format that is de facto standard right now for UI. And because JavaScript is working better, we added some features to Jasper Reports library that allows to have some interactivity. First, we can use Jasper Reports components like charts. For example, we use high charts, or we can use Google Maps that will allow some interactivity in HTML reports. Like, for example, you can zoom a chart, or you can click on a chart and see a detail. All this is done in JavaScript inside the HTML. But it's not enough. Actually, users want to modify a report. For example, they have a table and they want to reorder columns, they want to order records in a report. They want to reformat some elements of the report, and for this we actually created a framework, a servlet, that will get commands from the HTML page. So in each HTML page, to each element we add a JavaScript that will call this servlet. And for each command, we implement some code that will modify a report template, will regenerate the report, and send a new page to the user. So this allows us to have interactive reports. But you have to start from a report that already exists. And users, they want more. They don't want to create these report templates because it's complicated. It needs a lot of knowledge of SQL, data. They need to learn our tools to create reports. So we have a next product that is a web server. It's called the Jaspersoft server. It's actually a web application. You can install it on the server you have. It's on Tomcat or WebSphere or whatever you have. And this web server provides UIs that help you build your reports in an easy way from your data. So actually you'll see your data and you start dragging your data and build some crosstabs, tables, charts or whatever. Then you can save the report and run it later or schedule it for running. For example, you can schedule it to be sent by email to the users or to put it on a FTP server. You can generate different formats from this report. So this is called analytics because it allows you to explore your data and visualize your data and even process, because we have a lot of statistical functions, so you can calculate averages, sums, and so on. So this is about analytics, what we call it. So let's look again at our products. So we have just a reports library that will do static reporting. And it's able also to create some interactive reports. We have a tool, Jaspersoft Studio, that an Eclipse-based application that will help you build these report templates in a visual way. It's a report designer that will help you also to run reports, debug them, and deploy on a server. And we have Jasper Report Server that actually is more than creating a report. It will help users work together with the reports, will help share reports between them. We have permissions, so users will see different reports depending on their role. We have dashboards inside Jasper Reports server, so you can create dashboard from your reports. And we provide also a REST API, so you can integrate your applications with our Jasper Report server. For example, you can use Jasper Report server from a PHP application using REST API, or you can use it in an Android or iOS application. We provide a SDK that uses REST API to look for reports on a mobile device. Or you can also embed your our report in a web page using a JavaScript API. So if you have a site, you can include some code like YouTube links, and you'll have your report. you have a full JavaScript library to do that. And all this is open source. We have a pro version with some fancy components like high charts. But if you don't need high charts to see HTML5 with JavaScript charts, you can use JFree charts and it will be free. So next, I'll make a demo on how to use Jasper Reports library in a Java application. A very simple example: how to use Jaspersoft Studio, how to create ad hoc reports with Jasper Reports server. I'll show some code. So I don't know if there are developers here or not. Probably not. So this is a simple Java application that will create a report in PDF format. So actually we connect to the database. I will use Veaceslav DB here. We will load an invoice template. We'll compile a report, fill the report. That actually means we execute the report. We get data and produce an intermediate binary format. And this binary format you can export to PDF, HTML, or Excel file. And we'll open this one. Just to show you how a JXML file, a template file looks. Actually, it's a text file in an XML format. It has JXML extension to be able to open JXML files with applications. Well, there are a lot of users that prefer to work directly in Notepad or VI and edit these JXML files, but you can use Jaspersoft Studio to do that. So let's run this simple application and see if we'll have our report. So we created an invoice with some data here in PDF format. This is a simple way to use Jasper Reports library directly in your application. If you have a custom application, you can use it from Java. Next, I'll show you how to create a similar report with Jaspersoft Studio. Jaspersoft Studio, it's an IDE that will help you work with Jasper Reports library. So we'll go to new Jasper Report. We have a lot of templates. We'll create a web interactive report. This one. I'll store it in my reports project. I'll use a sample DB. It's a format actually. We have here a query editor, but I'll use a plain SQL. Let's drag and drop. Next, you will discover the fields from the query. We'll get them all because we want them all. Finish. And he will create this report template. Well, report template, here you see like any other reporting designer. So we have a lot of elements on it. We have text fields, static text fields, images, a lot of rectangles, ellipse, and more complicated components like barcodes, charts. We have Google Maps, typical maps, and so on. So to preview this report, actually we have a preview view. This report was run. This is an image, but I want to show you interactive report. So we run in interactive viewer. So this viewer will use our servlet that will generate the report. And if we click here, for example, we can filter our report contains tier. Okay, now he will call the server and will show only products with that contains T. What else we can do here? We can format, so we can change fonts. We can apply some new sorting. I'll sort by ID. And we can navigate pages. We are not showing the whole report because it could contain many pages, thousands. We return the report page by page, so we have a navigator here. And for changes, we have undo redo, so I can undo my changes, and this is very useful if you done a mistake. This report, after he's in a good shape, actually we can save it and work it later. So you have seen static reporting and interactive reporting. Now I'll show you what you can do with just report server or web application, and we'll create an ad hoc report. So okay. So we can select, to create an ad hoc report, we have to select our data. I have here a FoodMart database. I'll use FoodMart for data for crosstab. And here we see our data structure on the left. On the right, we actually see our visualization that is empty now, but if I drag and drop some fields here, I'll start seeing a crosstab in this case. So let's create a crosstab. Create by store name. Put it in a row, and we'll look at them the country level. Here he is doing pretty the same what I was showing in interactive reports, but it's more complex. Here you see your data here. You can drag and drop data, and you can perform a lot more visual actions with this data. So I have a crosstab. I can reorder rows in my crosstab by drag and drop, or columns. I can, for example, select a column and change the function. I can use an average. I have simple data, but I can use full data. So in this case, you'll see more. I can add some filters. So for example, I will take, I create a filter by product name, create filter. Is one off. Let's select beer. Apply. Stop. You can change from crosstab to table. Here you have to change columns and groups, or you can see it as a chart. Here we'll see it as a bar chart, but we can change chart types to something else that have sense here. So this is what we call analytics. Actually, these reports are fully interactive. You can build reports out of your data without writing SQL code. He will create necessary joins behind the scenes. And finally, you can save this ad hoc report or export this ad hoc report to Excel or CSV file or something else. But Jasper Report Server is not only about this. It's like I told you, it will give you the main components to build and maintain reports. So you have data sources inside that you can reuse. You have connections, you have queries, you can create query objects that you can reuse. You have a common place for your users to work with report. You can create report units. Report units are bundles. It's a report that contains sub-reports, maybe, and maybe you have some images inside your report. Maybe you use some different fonts. All this you can manage with Jasper Report Server. You have also dashboards and you have domains. Dashboards are built from Jasper reports or ad hoc views and will help you create the links between the reports. So when you click on an element inside the dashboard, you'll go to detail, and maybe this is another dashboard, and you don't have to worry about creating these links manually. I was quite fast, so if you have questions, you can ask me.
So how is it meant to you enter the tables in your database that you wish to report from?
Yes.
And the tool finds out how to join them, and you tell them what relations.
Yes, actually, Jasper Report Server behind the scenes, he will create some objects. We create some domains. Domains are a little bit more complicated to create. It's not for this demo, but the idea of domains, you define the tables you want to use, and you define relationships between the tables. And when you run this ad hoc report, every time you do something, he will be able to create queries himself using domain, using these definitions in the domain, these mappings. Right now, domain works only with GDBC drivers, so you need SQL database or a database that provide us metadata that will help us create joins in the right way. because but it's not working with other type of data sources, because Jasper Reports library is able to work with any data source, actually not only JDBC data source. So if you have Hibernate, or you have Spring or AGB, you have some POJO objects, you can create data source, and we'll use this data source to get our data, to get your data and show this data in the report. Well, I don't think you will have to do that unless you have some very specific data, because we already provide data sources for CSV files, JSON, XML, so you can use XPath queries to query your data. We provide data sources for MongoDB, Cassandra, Hive, all NoSQL data sources. We provide some generic data sources that will help you provide data to Jasper Reports library from an array of objects or a collection or something else. But we have a lot of users that like doing a lot of customization, and they have their own data source, they maintain them, and through these data sources we can work with data inside the report. But in this case, we'll use a domain. This domain will generate behind the scenes SQL. Will generate selects with joins, and will show you data. And another specific of this ad hoc tool, you can use it only with table, chart, and crosstab. And you can't actually use other components that we have here in Jasper Reports. In Jasper Reports, we can use maps, for example, or we can use barcodes. Here, you can, in ad hoc tool, you can't. But you can save this ad hoc ad hoc report. It's a Jasper Reports report. You can get it here in Jasper Report Studio. We provide an interface, a plugin to work with Jasper Reports server. And you can customize this Jasper Reports template. You can add barcodes, you can add Google Maps or whatever you want. You can create paths on Google Maps, or you can set some markers on Google Maps that will come from some data sources you have, a database or CSV files. You can write your own components. For example, we have in a free version for charts, we use JFree chart. It's not interactive, it will generate an image, but you can use it in PDF or other places. But if you want something more advanced for HTML format, we have a custom visualization component that actually will generate an XML or JSON inside your HTML page, and you can plug your visualization library that will draw a chart from this data. It's similar how Google works. Always pluggable, extensible. So, for example, Jasper Studio is an Eclipse-based application. We provide it as a standalone application, or you can get plugins and install it into your Eclipse. If you work, for example, with WebSphere, probably you have WebSphere Studio, or you have some PHP plugins, you can mix them. All is open source. You have to pay for support, commercial support and licensing. And for this new fancy HTML5 components, but we have a big user community, documentation. You can find tutorials on the web. You can find a lot of screencasts on YouTube. And if you ask questions on the forum, be sure you get an answer in the same day or in a couple of days. Any other question?
A question about Jaspersoft was its own company a year or two ago, or
Yes.
now we're TIBCO?
Jaspersoft was acquired by TIBCO
Okay.
a year ago, and now it's it's a division called TIBCO Analytics that will do visualizations, that work on visualizations, that work on tools like that create static reporting, interactive reports, analytics, so you're able to visualize and work with your data.
But the open source part is still left, and will.
Well, I think we are the only open source part in TIBCO right now.
Yeah.
Jaspersoft, I think from a technical point of view, you get a lot in open source part, and the commercial users, they are just getting support and they are paying licenses.
Yeah.
I think TIBCO wants to use this experience for other TIBCO products because we were also successful on the commercial. So we had growing revenue, growing user base, and I think they had some problems with other TIBCO products that are not open source, and they were going a bit down, and now they want to transfer this knowledge of how to sell these products to TIBCO. Few years ago, we are not selling very much, but we hired a sales team, and after that they find the right place where to sell, the right message, and companies that need these products. And since then, we're going there. So if you have your own open source project, I don't know if it's better to invest on polishing your product and adding a lot of features, or better is to have some basic features but that are very popular, and hire some sales persons that will sell the software. You have feedback from users, and then you can add features that really needed by open source users, but also by commercial users. First, actually, for example, this custom visualization component, it's a new component, and we didn't know if it would be commercial or community edition. And finally, it's for now, it's a community edition. Why? Because we can't, it's in development, and we can't provide support, commercial support for it. So maybe later we'll move it to commercial, but right now it's community edition. Users can test it, users can give us feedback, we can improve it, and later, probably like with other components, we'll add some cool features, or I don't know, cool for commercial use. Actually, I have an impression that commercial users, they don't necessarily need these cool features, but they have to motivate to the management why you have to buy and not use the free version. actually they need the support.
Yeah.
So they can call us and we can meet them using online tools or directly and give them a way to work around a problem or fix a problem.
Okay.
Okay. I was clear with ad hoc how it works, or you are not convinced?
Perhaps.
Well, it's very complicated when you have a big domain with many tables, you have to map them, but it's a lot easier than creating and maintaining SQL for each report. For example, previously I worked in a company. We worked on an ERP application and we had 1,000 reports, many reports. And we had variations of reports. It was the same report, but different customers had different versions of the report because they wanted different ways to view the data. And at that time, we used just the reports library, and it was very difficult to maintain this. If you changed something in your model, you had to go through all these reports and modify all selects, and it was a nightmare. So in this case, you can on just the report server, you can actually reuse the query objects, and you can change your query in one place, or you can create a domain. And if you are changing something, you are changing in the domain. You change your query in the domain, but the interface to the reporting engine will be the same, unless you not change this interface. There are a lot of constraints inside the just report server. So if you, for example, want to delete a query like this, he will see that there are reports using it, and he will notify you, and you eventually will go modify this query, and then delete or whatever you want to do with it. If not, you have to re-implement all this to show data, to generate data in different formats. For example, in PDF, we are not exporting as images, but we exporting as images, text, and there are some cases we can export as SVG images or Flash plugins, and it's quite accurate. He will produce high-quality PDFs. In Excel, we are not just exporting data like a CSV and you open it with Excel, but you can customize exactly cells, and he will set the type of the cell. For example, if you have a column of integer type, he will set in Excel the type to integer. You can customize, you can create splits and put your data on different Excel sheets. So it's quite advanced and high quality exporter. And of course it's in a perpetual bug fixing. Users always want more. They find some features, new features. There are compatibility issues, maybe between Excels, but we are working on it and fixing. It's a mature library. It's created in 2001, and we are still in the business, and we are successful, and we'll be more successful with it because we are working every day.
Right. How do you compare to ClickView? One question. Second question, do you always go to the origin for data, or do you read data and store it in memory or in other intermediate system to be able to access it in a more efficient way for your application?
About ClickView, I don't know. And don't know how ClickView works.
Right.
But I can explain you about data. For example, in just the report case, in just the reports library case, we will take our first example. In this case, I will always execute this select. I'll go to the data. And if you look here, it's a synchronous call. So you have to wait until the result set is iterated and will generate report. You can do this also asynchronous. So you'll get a first page in a separate thread, and then you'll get updates from this thread. This is in case of Jasper Reports library. In case of Jasper Report server, Jasper Reports library provide a cached data set. So you can cache your data on the server, or you can go each time and rerun your query. In the demo I made, actually the data was cached. And we can work with big result sets because we paginate data and we get it in pages. We have our tricks to do that. So, if it's not clear, I can detail more. So in this case, he will get the data. You work with data. You change visualizations, and that's it. If you want to refresh, you can refresh. I think here. Something. It was a little odd. I'm working more on Jasper Soft Studio, so. But we are working. There is a reward somewhere, so he will regenerate all the data. Of course, if you have a big amount of data, this could take time. But for example, if we compare to BERT, we are working on a result set. So if you have the data, we start working on the report immediately. We are not getting all the data always and then generating the report. So it's a parallel process.
But I guess the SQL you're producing will do some kind of group by.
Yes, you can use group by from SQL, or you can use our group by. It depends. Now it depends on JDBC driver and on the database, and it's not only depending on JDBC driver and database if they can do this group by and can do this group by fast. It also depends on the complexity of your data. Maybe sometimes you decide it's better to do it locally, group by.
Yes, but how does it choose when to do it locally?
We have a strategy.
Okay, so now
you have what I show you. It's a demo for users of Jasper Report server, but behind you have a full engine with a lot of components and configuration files, and you can configure almost everything. It's open source. You can look in the source, but you also can configure almost everything from configuration files. And here we have server management, server settings.
But it's a kind of a configuration issue.
Yeah.
Like this table is huge, and the engine should use database group by.
Yeah. Sometimes maybe table is not huge, but you perform calculations, and maybe or you have complex joins, multi-level of joins, and you create maybe some views in database. It's up to report designer or the person who is maintaining these reports to see what are performance problems and optimize these queries and how it works. So he has all the buttons to do that. If he don't know how to do it, he can ask us, and we will teach this report designer or programmer to do that. But it's a very complicated story about all this optimization. It could be your database server is fast, but you have a problem with JDBC driver that is not fast, or database server is fast, JDBC driver is okay, but you have a slow connection. So you have to debug all of that. But we have an in-memory engine that actually is doing a kind of follow-up inside and is able to produce this data to show the reporting. And here you have log settings, you can monitor your server and do all the stuff you usually do. You can also parameterize reports. For example, for our invoice, we have here an outline view. So you can add some report parameters, like parameter 1. Let's see it in a properties view. It's for prompting. For example, if here we'll use integer type. When we run the report, he will show a panel with all parameters, and you can pass parameters to the report. And these parameters you can use inside your query to run, for example, a query between 2 days. Or you can use it inside your report, for example, to show a name, or to show a title, or to show something from a user input. There are users that use as parameters images, for example, and you can select an image, and when you run your report, you will see a different image selected by user. Well, there are a lot of settings. You can set locale, you can set time zone, you can set even locking strategy, how to work with your data.
Can you define dimension hierarchies?
Dimension?
Dimension hierarchies, like countries. If you have your
in Jasper reports, you can't define dimensions. You have to use Jasper report server to define dimensions.
Okay. Okay.
This is done actually by domains.
Okay.
In domains, it's a separate tool where you define your data. He will automatically discover some possible joins